we are back for another episode of CFL Summer Showcase Northern Lights, and there is a lot to talk about as it's been a few weeks since we have been on. But before we get into that, Michael, how are you doing this morning? Uh-oh. Michael?
So, I have all my shopping done, thankfully, and
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, well, I got most of it done actually early. I just hadn't received it yet, waiting for it, online orders and stuff like that. But everything's good over here on this, and man, just been busy, hectic. How about you, man? How you doing anyway?
I can't complain. Same. Very busy as always. You need the holidays and stuff just kind of hits the wall and gets crazy. But that's all right. Figured even though it'd been a few weeks, it's made sense to get together and tie a bow on the CFL season, since we never really did a closing episode, I guess you could say. So here we are this morning to talk about quite a bit of stuff. I mean, obviously the big news that came out the past couple weeks has been the coaching changes in Toronto. Then there's also, major re-signings, NFL workouts, a couple other things that we'll discuss as well. But excuse me. The first thing that we wanted to discuss, and probably the biggest piece of news, is all these changes with the Argos. The first being the hiring of Mike Miller. What are your thoughts on just the promotion of Mike Miller, first of all, and then we'll get into some of these other changes that have happened with the Argos?
Well, obviously, when Coach Dinwiddie made the move to Ottawa, I think it kind of shocked and sent ripples and waves through everybody involved in the CFL, primarily from a standpoint of, you and I specifically didn't expect, Coach Dinwiddie to make the jump in any which way, shape, or form. I know Toronto didn't have the year that they were looking for, and I don't know if that played a factor into any of his decision making there, or if it was just simply a matter of, opportunity arose. Maybe Ottawa presented him a package that he couldn't refuse that he wasn't getting from Toronto. It's hard to know. The CFL is fairly tight-lipped on a lot of details when it comes to certain things like that. You get small leaks here and there, but overall it was kind of shocking. As far as Mike Miller becoming the head coach for Toronto, it's an interesting choice because he's never been a head coach before, but he's been coaching since 1997, if I remember correctly. So he's a veteran coach with a lot of experience, but just none at the head coaching position. He was the QB coach, I believe, co-offensive coordinator, I believe, with Toronto. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But I know he was at least the QB coach for them. Am I right? Was he co-offensive coordinator?
No, it was just actually Dinwiddie was kind of the offensive coordinator. He was just the quarterback coach.
He was just the QB coach. So I mean, at least a hire in-house. I like the idea of hiring in-house, and I like the fact that it's a QB coach, especially when you're dealing with Chad Kelly, and you have the relationship there already. So it's already an established relationship. There's no feeling out process for that. So I'm not surprised that Toronto ended up actually turning to Miller when you actually look at all the pieces and how everything fell in place for them, especially with the year they had last year. Kelly missed all of it. He didn't play in any of it. And then on top of that, Miller has been there and has a relationship with Kelly. So I think it's the easiest transition for a guy like Chad Kelly to be able to have familiarity. On the flip side, the rest of the team, it's a big question mark, right? Just because you have that relationship with the quarterback doesn't mean you have that relationship with the rest of the team. I don't know how well Mike Miller, I mean, I haven't heard anything bad, so I'm sure Mike Miller's well loved and liked inside the coaching world. I'm sure his team loves him as far as, the players that have gotten to know him, that have worked with him directly. But it's still always a huge question mark when you have zero head coaching experience coming into a league the caliber of CFL, into a franchise that has, up until last year, really had a storied run, right? Like, it's been a hell of a run for them. So that is the biggest question mark whenever it comes to something like this. When you hire a guy who doesn't have a ton of experience, but is on the older end, from a veteran leadership from a veteran standpoint, from a coaching experience, because it really makes you wonder how he's going to adapt to this new role, having never been in it. So it's kind of a feeling out process for the rest of the team. But at least the big step with Chad Kelly is that doesn't be a feeling out process because he already has that experience and relationship with him.
That's a fair point, and I think that probably has something to do with it. I mean, if the plan here is to keep Chad Kelly long term, then you have to wonder about his relationship with any coach you bring in. And if you notice how the hold on just a sec.
Yeah, and if you take a look at the overall aspect, I mean, he's been there since 2022. And I think that that's another key component of this as well, because Kelly's been there for that long. So I completely agree with you. And maybe Chad had a huge say in this too. Like, we don't know. There's been no reports. I haven't seen anything that suggests that Chad Kelly's been part of this head coaching search. But you figure with a guy of the caliber of Chad Kelly, he probably was part of this head coaching search in some capacity, at least an input of some sort, or some sort of just advice or what he's looking for as a starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like you said, a player of his caliber, you have to consult him on any hire that you're going to do. And I think that was part of the calculated decision they made to look at a lot of in-house candidates or candidates they were familiar with, because if you look back at their hiring list or their interview list, more often than not, they were guys that had already played for the Argonauts or had coached there in the past. With, I think, Rick Campbell being the one exception, all the way up to Mike O'Shea. Mike O'Shea had a long history in Toronto before he jumped over to Winnipeg. So it made a lot of sense. Just kind of overall, once you saw the full picture of their interest in different coaches, that they were trying to pick up somebody that they felt comfortable with, especially after they struck out on O'Shea. But one of the other big things that came out of this whole search that I wanted to bring up today as well is that they had kind of apparently used back channels to reach out to Corey Mace to see if he would have any sort of interest in taking the position, which to me, he would have been like the dream candidate. Mike O'Shea is great, don't get me wrong, but like Corey Mace just left a couple seasons ago. He still has familiarity with all the roster. Just won a Grey Cup. If you could have made that work, that would have been a home run hire. But the way they did it, obviously, incited this investigation, which has now been concluded. They never said anything about the suspensions or fines that could come from it, but just kind of another black mark on Toronto that has had, quite a few incidents recently over the past couple of years that are not exactly great, or incidents you want coming out.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit surprised that they reached out to Corey thinking that they were going to be able to entice Corey enough to want to come back from just winning a Grey Cup. He spent 2 seasons in Saskatchewan where he's built an entire roster and helped that team become one of the perennial powerhouses. Let's be honest. I mean, Saskatchewan right now is looking like a team that's probably not going to be knocked off the top. We're going to see a little bit of like a Toronto/Winnipeg type run that we've seen, up until recently, the last couple of years. With Saskatchewan, I really honestly feel that way. You mentioned it last year when it came to talk about, dark horse candidates. We saw what Corey Mace did this year preseason. They were my team to win the Grey Cup. They won the Grey Cup. So I think that we're going to see something along those lines, like we saw with a few, like a stretch where we saw with Toronto and Winnipeg near the top. We're going to probably see that with Saskatchewan here, and I think it's going to make a good East-West feud with Montreal, because I feel Montreal's probably we will discuss a little bit of they made a big off-season signing already as well. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I just feel like that reaching out to Corey Mace just was desperation. So that's my other concern with Mike Miller, is primarily because if you were trying to do that back channel stuff with Corey Mace and you didn't get Rick Campbell, and you didn't get Mike O'Shea, like, how much of this was just a desperation hire because you just needed to get somebody in there now? And that is a little concerning to me, because it tells me that they weren't prepared for Dinwiddie to leave. and maybe they were taken just as by as much shock as we were in the situation as well. I'm not sure what happened there, but it really felt like Toronto was unprepared for the surge.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I mean, I think if if this had been a situation that you knew was coming, maybe you cast a wider net. You start interviews earlier or something like that. But I think it caught quite a few people off guard. It was kind of some whispers between Dave Naylor and I think Three Down Nation had mentioned it at one point. And like you said, both of us kind of just dismissed it. And we're like, oh yeah, no way. And then next thing we know, he's named the head coach and GM of the Red Blacks, and it kind of throws the whole offseason on its head. But what I found interesting is that there have been other changes that I wanted to talk about as well with the Argos, and quite a few changes. Obviously, as you see here, assistant GM John Murphy is out, and then what really kind of struck me as interesting is Kevin Iben and Jason Shivers are both leaving, both co-defensive coordinators. They both also ran a position as well. Iben was the linebacker coach, Shivers was the DB coach, but they're both leaving, and both of these guys were literally just interviewed for the head coaching position as well. So how do you go from being that high on these two men to letting them leave? I mean, even if Mike Miller's promoted, isn't part of the point of hiring somebody in-house to have some continuity, especially on the coaching staff? So, I mean, getting rid of both your defensive coordinators seems like kind of a strange move. And then you also, I will say the front office moves I do like. Jim Barker, director of player personnel, longtime CFL guy, has a lot of knowledge. John Huffnagel, coming over from Calgary, was a huge hire. I never saw that coming. And I'm curious how that kind of all came together. But I believe his comments were that it seemed like they were moving in another direction. So he ends up in Toronto to help out with the GM as well. So kind of a star-studded front office there. But I really have some questions about the coaching staff formation and why, the defensive coordinators are now let go.
Well, I think for me, when you look at that and you interview both those guys for a position and then you let them go, it sounds like to me that once they settled on Mike Miller, it was either some hard feelings that happened, or Mike Miller just didn't feel that they held their own and wanted to go in a different direction from a defensive standpoint. I mean, it's hard to tell. The relationship between offensive defensive coaches is usually pretty, unless you have a coach that coaches both ways, it's usually very very edgy, because one person has a philosophy on defense, the other person has a philosophy on offense, and it's very possible that Mike Miller just didn't like the direction the defense went in this past year. Again, Toronto was a very weird case. Nobody expected to have the season that they had. Nobody called that in the preseason, and if they say they did, they're lying to you. And Chad Kelly, his injury played a big part of that, but really that defense was kind of not nearly as well off as it had been in the past. One thing about Toronto is if they struggled in games, their defense was always able to keep them in games. And this year it didn't feel like they had that. So I don't know if that was injuries or if it was something else, but clearly Mike Miller in the front office kind of felt that, those two defensive coordinators probably either were going to be more of a hindrance to Mike Miller's staff, or Miller just had a different vision for his defense. It's hard to tell. It's the one thing about the CFL that is I like it, but it's really frustrating at the same time, because there's just not enough information that comes out. But it does kind of curb a lot of the drama, and it put a lot of bad, imagery out there for people. But it's like, I really want to know what happened there, because I agree with you. It's kind of odd to, interview for a head coaching position and then get let go, days later after you announce or the next day really after you announce the head coach. So very interesting dynamic there, but we'll probably never know with the way that the CFL is unless somebody comes out and says something, and it's like, honestly, this is what happened. And, but I wish them the best. And, honestly, I wouldn't mind taking one of them in Calgary, to be honest with you. So.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, to be completely honest, my immediate thought was they're going to end up joining Ottawa, and one coached linebackers, one coached defensive backs. Which, granted, we brought over Will Fields last year, so he came over, was previously co-defensive coordinator with Toronto, so he's the only coach that's technically under contract on Dinwiddie's staff so far in Ottawa. So I think that's a very realistic possibility that one or both of those guys could jump over and join the Red Blacks, sooner rather than later, I would imagine. But I could also see them, landing with a team like Hamilton or I think Calgary's pretty set on their coaching staff, but there's a couple other teams that need some help. Edmonton lost some coaches, which speaking of which, we'll go ahead and transition over and talk about the couple changes that have gone on around the league that are also coaching related. So Demetrius Maxey, the defensive line coach from Edmonton, will not be returning. And also the offensive line coach from Montreal, Luc Brodeur-Jourdain, has stepped away. Tommy Condell, formerly the Ottawa Red Blacks offensive coordinator, interviewed with Winnipeg for their offensive coordinator positions. So just kind of a quick roundup of the rest of the coaching situations this offseason. Anything that kind of sticks out to you?
Not really. I mean, Edmonton's, the D-line coach with Maxey, just he's I don't know if it was him or if it was just the way the dynamic of the team was made up or what his power was, even from a standpoint as a coach like that, because when you're a D-line coach, you're coaching a specific way within a defensive coordinator's scheme. So it's either it either blends really well or it breaks. And Edmonton really struggled to get pressure on quarterbacks the last couple of years. So I don't know if that was a direct line to this and what caused it. And maybe he's being a scapegoat for a different philosophy with defensive coordinators or whatever. But there's no denying that Edmonton really struggled getting pressure on QBs. So when that happens and you have two really bad years like Edmonton's had, or three really bad years, maybe even longer now that I think about it, then it's not really a surprise to see changes at the independent individual position coaching level of that nature. So other than that, I mean, I think Montreal will be okay. My guess is if Jourdain stepped away, they knew as an organization it was going to happen, so they had time to prepare for it. Anytime that something like that happens, unless it's like a medical emergency or something that's like drastic that happens in someone's personal life, they're usually pretty well prepared if it's just a step away of some sort. So Montreal should be okay with that. So, but other than that, the rest of those coaching changes or coaching news, there's really nothing else that sticks out to me.
Yeah, that's fair. I am a little interested to see how Edmonton's defensive line responds in 2026, because obviously we talked about it heavily last year. They're going to get their first round pick from the 2025 draft finally back in that defense. So we were both very excited about him. And just a quick reminder to anybody who's been watching the show all season, both Michael and I had Toronto as our number one team in our preseason power rankings. So that tells you how we felt Toronto would play this year. And I think we were both very surprised by how the season unfolded for them, for sure. But to move on,
I think everybody was surprised by how that unfolded for
them. I would think so, yeah. I mean, but granted, I don't think most of us expected Chad Kelly to get hurt either. Not that it was Nick Arbuckle's fault by any stretch. He played really well, but that definitely changes the dynamic of the team for sure. But we're going to move on to the NFL workouts. And most of this data, just for anybody who was watching, it came from tsn.ca. A guy I actually used to write with at CFL News Hub, Cody Wiles, has compiled all this information. So please go check out his full list on there. But here is a list of the players that have CFL ties or rights or held by a CFL team that have had NFL workouts. Any names on this list that kind of stick out?
Yeah, and when you look at this list, I was just getting ready to say, when you look at this list, obviously, Taylor Elgersma, he's already been on some practice squads. He's already been, on and off, teams. Green Bay, I think, was where he was last year. So it's not really a surprise that they, the NFL called him back in some capacity to try out. Damian Alford is an interesting one because we talked about him when he was drafted to Calgary. And we talked about how if it wasn't for the transfer in the injury or the transfer and just never seeing the field, he probably would have had NFL, been an NFL draft pick of some sort. My problem is it's so late in the game now that the only thing that's going to happen with any of these guys is going to be a futures contract. None of these guys are going to be able to make the rosters at this point in time. It's the one thing that sucks about the CFL scheduling because that overlaps so deep into the NFL season. And I get that that's just how it's going to be, and it's how it's always going to be. And I'm not clamoring for any kind of changes of that nature, but it's just that's the one thing that happens with the CFL players is they don't have the opportunity like the UFL to jump to the NFL, unless their season ends earlier. And in this case, it doesn't end earlier. So, but these guys will definitely be able to make an impression. I also really like Dante Myers on this list. I really liked him this year. I thought he played really well. I think that he kind of fits more of an NFL style, like slot receiver type player. And I don't really know his measurements off the top of my head, but I feel like he might be a little bit of a bigger slot receiver if I'm correct. So if that's the case, that's kind of where the NFL has kind of been going a little bit lately with their bigger slot guys. Like Chris Godwin's been really, really prevalent in that position for Tampa Bay for years. For the last few years, they kind of moved him inside a lot more. So, I think most of these guys would be depth pieces at this point, but if I see any of them sticking, it would probably be more on the D line or linebacking side of things, because that's usually seems to be the translation for the CFL more than anything.
To your credit, there's only been one player that signed a contract so far, and that's Tanner McLaughlin, the tight end right here. And I would need to pull up the list to see exactly which team he signed with. I do see an opportunity for some guys on this list to potentially get signed, but like you said, they're not necessarily going to be starting caliber players right away. But Isaiah Wooden, Trey Vaval, Travis Teese, also there was one other player that I had on this list. Actually, he did not track this move, but also another wide receiver that got a look was, oh man, I'm blanking his name at the moment. Dear Lord. Man, he played with Massachusetts a couple years ago. He was also with the Red Blacks for a brief time and played in the GFL last season and got a look as well with the Browns. So those four guys kind of stick out to me because they have availability to play on multiple different facets of special teams. They have, some availability to be a dominant kick returner. And one of the things that I noticed is the Browns worked out 3 or 4 different players that could return kicks. So I think there's a potential that the Browns make a move there. But we'll see. The Browns actually worked out 6 different players from with CFL backgrounds after the window opened. So the Broncos also looked at a few of these players. The Vikings were very heavy on this list as well as the Saints. One guy that I would love to see signed because I think he has a really his athletic profile fits what the NFL is looking for is Devin Verasuk. I think that dude could be a baller. He just needs the high level coaching to kind of take his game to the next level. But I mean, special teams alone, he would be an asset. It's like a 4'4" guy at linebacker, 230 pounds. So how could you not want that guy on your team?
I was going to say Derek Slikwa.
That's fair too. He is a guy that
he was
also
another guy that I didn't see him. Yeah, I didn't see him originally on the list for some reason. I just skipped right over his name, but he's a guy who I think has NFL upside as well. DB is a little bit harder because the position's reads a little bit different between the CFL and NFL translation. But I think that a guy of his caliber, he could easily, slot in there and maybe get a nice little role playing, supporting role type position in a secondary where he's a rotational piece and he's able to plug in there and be okay with it. So, it's like what I thought he had a standout year for Toronto, considering the fact of how bad, Toronto was defensively and on the field in general overall. So him standing out the way that he stood out, I think it would be he would be a good position in the rotational. I think it was the Colts and Bengals who tried him out, and both those teams need secondary help. So maybe he'll get an opportunity, or maybe he'll get a futures contract here when they do the futures at the end of the season. But I think he has NFL upside as well. So
I agree, and honestly, I think he's kind of he could be a poster child of exactly what the CFL can do for you to get you back in the NFL. He's a guy that came out, was originally a wide receiver, if I remember correctly, moved to defensive back, played really well, was very productive, and then, gets the NFL look. So, I mean, hopefully he could make the move. Jalen Hutchings is another guy that I think has a really good opportunity to potentially get a contract at some point. He was dominant this year. You can't find guys like him on the interior defensive line that produce pressure at the rate that he did this year very often. So I think he's a rare guy as well. So he makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and the other thing is too, when you take a look at any type of defensive lineman of any sort, like the position's harder at the CFL level because the dynamics change so much because you're further away from the ball. So you have, there's a running start and all that other stuff, but you still have your technique that changes because of the yardage difference. But if you're able to master that at the CFL level, you can master that at the NFL level. It doesn't change enough from the CFL to the NFL side to make that much of a difference that you're going to struggle with the NFL terminology or the NFL style of technique. So I think that's actually a really good point by you when it comes to involving him, because he was so damn dominant this year. So maybe we'll see him on the futures contract list here, and maybe he'll get a chance to show out in NFL camp this summer.
It would make a lot of sense. I mean, what do you lose by bringing a guy like that in for at least rookie minicamp or something? You know what I mean? So he would be a guy that makes a lot of sense to me, especially because he's still very young. So he's only got 1 year at his position. I think he's like 24, 25 years old. You bring him in, you give him a look. Worst case scenario, he doesn't stick. You release him, and he goes right back to the CFL and continues playing well like he did. But we're going to take a quick break, hit a couple commercials, and then we'll be back to talk about some re-signings as well as a couple other pieces of news throughout this CFL offseason so far. It's been really, really interesting how everything's kind of come together so far. So stick with us. We got lots more to talk about.
This is current. It's the card my parents used to pay me for mowing the lawn, running errands, and doing well in school. This is the card I used when we got the idea to make our own clothes. And we spread the word, drove downtown, and sold everything we made. This is the card I used to do the things that really matter.
All right, we are back, and you might be wondering why I played an indoor football commercial during a CFL show. You might wonder that. And I will tell you that Tyreek Stewart, a former Columbus Lions player, recently signed a contract with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, actually this past week. So there is a little bit of a tie in there, although they are also a new partner of Shady Sports Network. So if you're a fan of indoor football and you happen to be in the Georgia area, please definitely check out the Columbus Lions. Go get some merch, get a pair of season tickets for you and your girl or guy. No judgment, just for the record. Whoever you want to bring, and go check out an awesome game. As you saw in the commercial there, great excitement, and obviously CFL level talented players. So moving on to some of the re-signings that have happened over the past couple of weeks. There's been big news specifically out of Montreal, like you mentioned before. Davis Alexander extended through 2028, and a big reason why, obviously, is the fact that up until the Grey Cup, he was undefeated as a starter for the Montreal Alouettes. So does this surprise you at all that the Alouettes are kind of realizing the value of Alexander?
No, I'm just more surprised at the length of the extension, because usually these extensions are only like 2 years. But I mean, I guess in essence it's only 2 years. I guess it's 3 years, 26, 27, 28. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised Montreal decided to shell into Davis. I mean, he's young, and we've talked about this before, that the CFL has, they develop quarterbacks, but a lot of their quarterbacks that are like at the top of their game are all older. So the fact that Davis Alexander is younger and at the top of his game, it's not really surprising to see a team hop on that and extend somebody who's been playing so well. Because like you said, undefeated up until the Grey Cup this past year as a starter, and he played hurt against Saskatchewan. Like, I mean, he was hurt against Saskatchewan. I'm not putting an asterisk against Saskatchewan's win by any means, but he did play hurt. So he wasn't 100%. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, next year, and see if he's able to keep the magic going. And hopefully his playing style doesn't hurt him enough to change too much, as far as injury, his health, it is concerned. So he had some injuries he battled through this year. Hate to see that for any quarterback, but a lot of times it's playing style. So we'll have to see if he plays a little bit smarter and changes certain things up to stop himself from hurting himself, basically.
No, that's completely fair. We saw several times last year where, instead of like sliding on the end of a quarterback run, he would dive. And I think there was actually one time where he dove and he like hurt his shoulder, if I remember correctly. But he's an exciting player to watch. And like you said, I mean, in the CFL scheme of things, he's very young as a starter. So this is a guy that you can definitely build around. I mean, by the end of this contract, he'll be 30 years old. And to put that in perspective, Trevor Harris just signed a 2-year contract extension. He's 39. So realistically, we could see a 10-year plus career for Davis Alexander in Montreal if everything goes according to plan. And I mean, obviously that's a lot of variables over the next 10 years. But, I mean, if he stays healthy and, nothing off the field happens, why would you move on from Davis if he's playing well? All of a sudden you build yourself a franchise quarterback that you spent multiple years developing, behind the scenes before you ultimately gave him the reins. And, I think this is a good thing. This is exactly what CFL needs. They need to build up more young quarterbacks, and they need to prove that, hey, if you're a young, a Division II, Division III guy, NAIA guy, and you want to go play somewhere and you want to, have a future in professional football, come up to the CFL, take a year or two on the practice squad, develop, and then, learn our game, come out and be a starter for many, many years to come. And Davis Alexander, I believe, came out of Portland State, so he didn't really have a lot of NFL prospects. And now here he is, signing a 3-year contract extension with the CFL. So, I mean, this is kind of, like I said, exactly what the CFL needs. So I think it's huge for the league and for the team, for the player as well, obviously. But I think it opens doors up for future players.
I think the biggest thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I thought you were done. I think the biggest thing is, to echo off what you were just saying, is it gives the CFL a face of the league. At that age, it gives the CFL a opportunity and a chance for the face of a league. Like, when you're that young, it's no longer the Bo Levi Mitchells of the world that are older. It's no longer the Trevor Harrises of the world that are older. You now can take it and and shift it to Davis Alexander, who's younger. Like the NFL went from Tom Brady to Patrick Mahomes. Like, it made perfect sense. And then, now with the CFL, you start moving away from that, even though Trevor Harris just won a Grey Cup, and now you move into Davis Alexander, who won a Grey Cup the year before. So, like, it makes sense from a standpoint that Montreal did this because he gives the face of the franchise, but now the CFL can start shifting their focus and give Davis Alexander to be the face of the future of the sport. So makes total sense. I'm happy for Davis. I really like him as a player. There's no denying that he's a winner, and we'll have to see what next year brings for him. Hopefully he can just stay healthy.
Absolutely. In Montreal, after this was actually before Davis Alexander resigned, but Tyson Philpott signed a 2-year contract extension as well. So you bring back his number one target. I think he had over 800 yards this season and in only 12 games, so he was banged up quite a bit and still very dominant as well. So big news for Montreal. You bring back 2 very key pieces. You kind of probably in the back of your mind are hoping Travis Teese does not sign an NFL contract. And then you have your own little, version of the triplets kind of forming there for Montreal. So, there's a lot of promise there on that offense with a lot of young players, which is always nice to see, especially because recently there's been a lot of talks of the lack of quarterback development, coming out of college, with the recent signing of 44-year-old Phillip Rivers. I think that maybe the NFL needs to tweak their focus and look at some guys that are coming out of the CFL, UFL that have some real legit playing experience, like a Davis Alexander. But to move on to some other big quarterback news.
NFL
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just the NFL, just the quarterback developmental problem is a huge issue. So I don't want to spend too much time hijacking it, but they really have a problem here in the States. So Phillip Rivers signing is mind-bogglingly stupid to me. But
I agree. 44-year-old guy, straight off the couch, hasn't played in 5 years. Now, I mean, obviously, it wouldn't shock me at all to see him come out and, be in the similar shape that he was before he left. But at the same time, to my knowledge, I've only heard of one other quarterback that they reached out to that was in the league, and that was Sam Ellinger, who was on the Broncos practice squad, and he opted not to go. So you go out, and your next option is Phillip Rivers, who's hasn't played in 5 years. So just kind of crazy to me that, there wasn't a single quarterback in the UFL or the CFL that you couldn't call. And, Taylor Elgersma, he's out there. Why not give him an opportunity? Just kind of insane. But we're getting off on a little bit of a tangent, and we got a lot more quarterback news to talk about because, Bo Levi Mitchell, Cody Fajardo, and then Trevor Harris and Tommy Stevens have all re-signed with their teams as well. So Bo Levi Mitchell, a guy who considered retirement prior to the 2025 season, signs a 2-year contract extension with Hamilton. What are your reactions on that move?
It's a little surprising, but it's not as surprising when you actually take a look at his season. I mean, you take a look at Hamilton and the way that they played this year. They were one of the better teams. They were the surprise team of the league this year. You picked them to win a playoff game, so people were definitely behind them on a train of sorts. So them, Cody Fajardo, and Trevor Harris, all those guys signing extension is not surprising in the sense of who they are as players. It's just more surprising considering their age. More than anything, that's probably the biggest thing that is shocking, considering the fact that this is usually around the time that people are starting to kind of, think about coaching. Like Cody turned down a coaching job, and it was like he wants to still play. So cool. Glad the fire and the passion's still there for you. Glad you still want to play. And none of them have really done anything to make me think that they don't deserve at least a chance to extend. It's just when you start getting to that age, though, it's like, okay, like, come on, guys. Like, when are we really honestly thinking about it here? Because it's going to take one hit. It's going to take one bad, year, and people are going to be calling for your head. So, but Harris makes sense just because of the championship. Bo Levi makes sense because of what he did, and Cody Fajardo makes sense because when Fajardo took over the starting job in Edmonton, they started winning games. Like, they started playing a lot better. So I'm not entirely upset with it. It's just, it's almost like the opposite of the problem the NFL has. It's like you have the Aaron Rodgers of the world holding up and eating 80% of the quarterbacking positions.
Exactly.
At this
and
level. So
that's
what happens.
kind of part of what makes
I'm
it so
excited to see
funny.
Levi back on the field. I really like him.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're good. Good, not a problem at all.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, like you said, I was kind of surprised just by the overall age of these guys because Fajardo is the youngest one. He's 33. Bo Levi Mitchell's 35. Trevor Harris is 39. So, I mean, we're talking about Harris is going to be playing into his 40s now. You know, Fajardo, probably by the time he hangs it up, we're going to be talking about him being 35 plus. Bo Levi Mitchell, you know, at this point, he's going to be late 30s. So, it's kind of funny to think that you look across the market in the NFL and a lot of the players that we're talking about are older. And, you know, we talk about a lack of development, and then the CFL has, you know, a fairly similar issue. A lot of these guys are older players, and they just really haven't had meaningful development behind them, which, you know, Montreal is obviously the one exception to that rule. Winnipeg's got a pretty good succession plan in place. You know, so I think there are a couple teams that have done a great job. I mean, obviously Winnipeg just developed a Drew Brown who became a starter. So for Ottawa, so I mean, I think there's a couple teams that do it well, but I think it's just a problem overall with football in general lately. The quarterback development just leaving a lot to be desired.
I think the CFL's problem is the lack of patience. I think a lot of these guys that get behind the starters don't want to sit and wait. You know, so
That's
like
fair.
you like the Davis Alexanders of the world sat and waited. You know, Drew Brown sat and waited. But, you know, if you're sitting behind Trevor Harris in Saskatchewan for the last 6 years, are you really going to be happy coming back as a backup every year? And, you know, like maybe you get your chance now and then you see that he's 39 years old and he signs a 2-year extension. Like, are you really going to, you know, want to stay in Saskatchewan or resign in Saskatchewan at that case? So I think Saskatchewan's on the opposite end of the quarterback developmental problem. I think their problem is because their starters are so well.
Yeah.
Like, I know that you see a lot of quarterbacks play at the CFL level. So you're going to get playing time if you're just patient, but a lot of times QBs specifically, they're not patient. They want to play, which is a competitive nature, which I get and understand. You know, people love to play football. You don't get into football because you just want to sit on the sideline. You want to play. So I understand that from that standpoint. It's a very delicate balance. Very delicate balance.
100%. 100%. But like you said, and to your credit, you know, the couple guys that we're talking about that have, you know, sat around and had that patience to develop and take the coaching are now starters. So, you know, there might be something there. Just saying. But a couple other pieces of news with the re-signing market. Jamal Peters returns to Hamilton. Daniel Adeboboye returns to Ottawa again. Obviously, that makes a lot of sense with Dinwiddie signed there, former Toronto Argonaut. Brandon Barlow returns to Edmonton. As mentioned before, Tommy Stevens is also returning to Saskatchewan. I think that's a huge re-signing for them. Clark Barnes returning to Calgary, and Cam Lawson signs a 2-year extension with Winnipeg. Obviously, these are all bigger moves. That's kind of why we're on this list. But are there any moves here that kind of stick out to you about players that really needed to return to their teams in order for them to be successful in 2026?
I mean, Keon Hatcher to BC and Clark Barnes to Calgary, I think would probably be the two biggest ones stick out to me from an offensive side of standpoint, because both those guys are kind of the glue at the wide receiver position that holds those teams together when they're healthy and on the field. Like you saw Calgary when Clark Barnes came back from injury this year, that passing game was able to open up a lot more because of what he was able to do in the coverage he was able to draw away from linebackers and safeties. Keon Hatcher is very similar. He's more of an outside guy, but he's the type that demands attention when he's on the field and he's producing at a high level. So both those signings, I think, were key for their teams from that standpoint in front. I really do like the Brandon Barlow re-signing in Edmonton. I think that Barlow was kind of a hidden gem on that team that was overlooked very easily. So Barlow getting his extension and re-signing with Edmonton is good because maybe they'll use him as a key component for that team moving forward. But other than that, I mean, it's pretty straightforward standard stuff for the CFL. You know, you re-sign the guys that are kind of the fabric and the glue that holds your team together, and then you just bring in the people that might pop the top off afterwards. So nothing too extravagant, but I really do like the Hatcher and Barnes signings the most out of this, because I feel it's important for that passing game to have both those guys on the field and healthy.
Completely agree. That's a huge re-signing for Calgary, and assuming Damien Alford comes back, that wide receiver group is looking stout for 2026 for sure. Did you have an opportunity to look at the pending free agents for the season? Did you catch that?
No, I did not catch that. You cut out on my end. I don't know if it's just because I have weather in this area or what, but
did you get a chance to look at the pending free agent list?
No, I have not got a chance to look at it.
Okay, no sweat.
Yeah, no, I didn't get a chance to look at it. I was trying to get to it this morning, and it kind of got buried because this was a little bit ago or whatever. But I did see through the CFLX format that Samuel Emilus is a potential free agent this year.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what he brings and impacts, but I think Saskatchewan needs him if you want Mustapin. Because I think that Emilus is a guy who has the potential to be the next big star receiver in this league if he's healthy. I mean, I mentioned him in the offseason leading up to how important he is to this team. And I know I mentioned Keyshawn Johnson being an extreme part of the help for this team, but Emilus is really the key guy to break open this offense. So I guess my thing to you would be is if Emilus doesn't sign back in Saskatchewan, where do you think he could end up?
Man, that's a good question, because I mean, there's so many teams that could benefit from adding him, and so many teams that have pending free agents at the wide receiver position as well. So, I mean, honestly, as much as I just said, Calgary has a stacked room. They could make sense for them to bring in a guy like that to kind of hedge their bets against the loss of Damien Alford. Because you have to consider. It's awesome to see these guys get NFL workouts, but if they go to camp with an NFL team, you're not going to see them back till the midway through the CFLS season at absolute best. If they make it all the way through training camp. Obviously, if they're an early cut, they could come back right away. But most of these guys like to kind of exhaust their NFL opportunities anyway at that point. So, you could see a situation where Alford all of a sudden doesn't come back till August, September, something like that. And now all of a sudden you're missing that kind of number one receiver. So it would make a lot of sense to bring in Emilus. And then if Alford stays, all of a sudden your wide receiver group is that much more dangerous. I could see him going to Ottawa as well. They've got a couple pending free agents at the wide receiver position. And then, like you said, Saskatchewan should really have a high value on Emilus because of what he did. And more importantly, what their offense didn't do when he was not on the field. There was a couple games there where they kind of had a losing streak, and it was more or less tied to the fact that Emilus wasn't able to play at 100%. So I think that's a big time re-signing for Saskatchewan, and a guy that you obviously don't want to play against him either. So you better, it's better off to just resign him and give him what he wants and keep him there in town rather than have to deal with him potentially going to a divisional opponent. Because that could make for some interesting storylines next season. Another wide receiver that I
think it's a top priority for Emilus to be Saskatchewan.
Sorry, what were you saying?
No, you're fine. You're fine. I think the weather's messing. I think the weather's messing with my connection, so I apologize for everybody up there. So I'm a little bit delayed compared to everybody else. But I think Emilus it should be a key signing for Saskatchewan. As much as I would love to see him in Calgary, or even see him, get a chance to shine in like an Ottawa format with the new underneath Dinwiddie and stuff. I really think it's going to be a key signing for Saskatchewan to re-sign him as well. So, That's what I just wanted to add that real quick.
Absolutely. Another guy at the wide receiver position that I thought was an interesting name that's kind of floating out there is Deshaun Brissett. He's a guy that, I think a lot of teams could benefit from him, being added to their room as well. William Stanbach is another free agent that could be very interesting for a couple teams. Jalen Hutchings, Tim White. So a couple different players that are out there that make some sense for some guys. Thomas Bertrand Hudon, Brady Oliveira. So there's a lot of names that are still out there that haven't re-signed yet, that could make for some really interesting changes for the league coming up here soon. And then another name that I wanted to kind of throw out there that I think would make a lot of sense for CFL teams to take a look at is Adrian Martinez. He was recently released by the 49ers. Obviously, he won, I think, the 2024 UFL MVP before signing with the Jets in the 2025 season. Very mobile guy. Could definitely do some of the short yardage stuff. Very young. Could be a guy that could come up and do something very similar to like a Bryce Perkins, who was recently signed by Winnipeg. So I think he would be a guy who would make a lot of sense for somebody looking for a younger quarterback to bring in and kind of round out their quarterback room.
Yeah, and Adrian Martinez may want to play in the States, but I think that the CFL should at least look at him for sure.
I agree.
Because, I mean, he's got the talent. He's got the talent. His style fits very well in the CFL. I honestly think that he would be a great CFL quarterback, if you want my honest opinion. So
same. That is exactly what I was thinking when I saw his name pop out there, and I was already kind of doing the research for this episode. I was like, he would make a lot of sense. But we're going to switch gears. One last kind of subject to talk about, and this is more just I guess run through them real quick. I don't really know that there's a sorry about that. It's the wrong graphic. That there's much to say about this, but we're going to run through the yearly awards real quick. And first of all, of course, Nathan Rourke took home 2 awards, Most Outstanding Player and Most Outstanding Canadian. Had a hell of a season, 352 completions on 500 attempts, 5,290 yards, 31 touchdowns, 16 interceptions, and another 10 touchdowns on the ground. Just an unbelievable season by Rourke. And then actually he set a record for the most passing yards ever by a Canadian, so it would make all the sense in the world for him to win Most Outstanding Canadian this season. So just a great season by Rourke. Any thoughts on him taking home both awards, which is obviously very rare?
the only thing I want to see is him clean up that touchdown to interception ratio. That's a 2-to-1 ratio.
That's fair. That's fair. He definitely
That would
did
be the
throw
only thing that I want to see him clean up.
some costly interceptions this year, depending on, situations. There were a couple games that BC lost, primarily because of interceptions he threw. So that's completely fair. But BC actually took home.
It's really the only thing that.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's really the only thing that stands out in that. No, you're fine. It's really the only thing that stands out in that graphic. Like everything else looks freaking fantastic, and then you just see that 2-to-1 interception to touchdown to interception ratio, and I think rule of thumb for most quarterbacks is you want to see, like, if you're going to see something like that, you obviously want to see it like 3-to-1 or 4-to-1.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in the CFL. I mean, with wide open field, you would think there'd be a little bit better ratio there, but BC actually took home 4 different awards with 3 different players. So the next one on that list is Andrew Pearson, was named the Tom Pate Memorial Award winner, coaches youth football, assists with school programs. He helps with stroke awareness. And this award is basically given out to, it's essentially the same thing as the Walter Payton Award for the NFL, the good guy award, the guy who's out in the community doing the stuff that really kind of impacts the next generation and stuff like that. So shout out to Andrew Pearson for being just a general good guy, trying to bring awareness for strokes and assisting with schools and all of these awesome things that he does. No qualms about this win for me. Any thoughts from you on this one?
No, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, good for him. I love when I see football players going out there in the community and doing good and trying to make a change using their platform. So I'm glad that he's bringing awareness to something that's affected millions of people. Something as severe as a stroke, and hopefully he just continues the good work and continues putting the boots on the grounds and being out there in the community.
Absolutely. And the final BC Lion on that list is Matu Betts, two-time Most Outstanding Defensive Player award now. 2025 stats, he had 42 tackles, 15 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles on the season. Again, just an unbelievable season by him, one of the best defensive linemen in the league. So not a surprise at all. Thought there were a couple other players who could have won this award, though. So were you surprised to see him win it again, or was it just kind of a foregone conclusion that they were going to give it to him and weren't going to worry about him necessarily repeating?
I think when you take a look at his statistics, 42 tackles doesn't really stand out, but when you're an edge guy, 15 sacks, and when 25% of those sacks result in forced fumbles, or it may not even been just the sacks, but you force 4 fumbles in the process as well. I think that's a pretty telling point. He was pretty dominant on his end. I wish that they had included quarterback pressures or quarterback hits on that list as well, because I think you would have got a fuller picture of why he won this award in comparison to some of the other guys that were up there for it.
Agreed, and that's on me. I will include pressures and hits next time if I can find that data. Trey Vavall.
Oh, I didn't know if they actually did it or not. I didn't know if you had just pulled these off from somewhere, so I didn't realize it was you. Not trying to call you out there.
No, you're good. You're good. No, honestly, that would have been a good stat to have on there, and I do think those stats are provided by PFF now. But most of these stats all just came off CFL.ca. But then moving on, Trey Vavall, most outstanding rookie, most outstanding special teams player. Trey was a weapon on special teams for Winnipeg this year.
Daddy.
3 kick return touchdowns, over 1,000 overall return yards. Just unbelievable season by him. He also had 4 special teams tackles, 1 interception, and 21 defensive tackles. And since his season has ended, he has gotten quite a bit of NFL interest. 4 separate teams invited him for workouts.
Yeah, it's not surprising when you see somebody this young have this kind of impact on the game and this kind of impact on, the sport as a whole. And Winnipeg had a really interesting year. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It was just kind of there. They made the playoffs, but they just weren't the same type of team. So he was actually he was a beacon of light for this team and a little firecracker when they needed it most. So it's unsurprising that he's been looked at because of the talent alone and the fact that he just, made plays and put his team in when they needed most. So I was very well received in the football world for sure.
That is fair. And then a trio of Saskatchewan Roughriders won awards. The first one being Jamarcus Yoshi Hardrick, most outstanding offensive lineman. And these stats are really hard to read there, but 17 games, 968 total snaps, 579 pass blocking snaps, 84.4 overall PFF grade, and an 85.5 grade in the run blocking game. Only a 2.9% pressure rate on the season, so obviously very deserving of the award. You're obviously our resident offensive line aficionado. What did you think about his season for Saskatchewan this year?
Oh, yeah, I mean, definitely deserved it. I mean, there's nobody here that I would say that probably deserved it more. I mean, Saskatchewan's offensive line was one of the best in the league all year. So it's unsurprising to me that someone on that offensive line won it. But those are the type of stats that the NFL needs to see. Like, I mean, honestly, the NFL's offensive line play hasn't been very good. And you see somebody like this putting up those stats up north. I mean, it should have drawn attention to him. But Saskatchewan's got themselves a real one there. They better lock him down and try to hold on to him, because he could be a key anchor point to that offensive line moving forward.
Agreed. And actually, I do think they re-signed him for a 1-year contract for 2026. So he will be back with Saskatchewan, and he probably should have been on the re-signing list. That's also my bad. So another Saskatchewan offensive lineman winning an award, Logan Ferland, the starting center. He's played in 5 seasons for Saskatchewan, 83 games, 1 penalty in the last 62 games. That is unreal. He's also a team captain, an ambassador for the local hospital, and an ambassador for an Ronald McDonald House, which also is kind of tied to the hospital. So another great guy, another type of player that you want on your team, but more importantly, a very steady offensive lineman that does not shoot his team in the foot very often.
Again, Saskatchewan's offensive line was one of the best in the league last year, so not surprising again that they got 2 awards out of this deal and recognized for sure, because key components, Ferland and Hardwick. So good for them. They're going to be tough next year again.
Agreed. And then the final winner is, of course, Corey Mace, Coach of the Year, which, I mean, I don't think there was another decision here. Saskatchewan was probably the most solid team all year long, and we picked them very early on to not only win this award, but also probably be Grey Cup contenders. And they went out and not only contended, but they won it. This is his 4th Grey Cup as in the CFL. He's played in 1 as a player. He won as a defensive line coach. He won as a defensive coordinator, and now he's won as a head coach. So just honestly, what a career by Corey Mace so far. And obviously Saskatchewan has got to be happy to hear that he has zero desire to leave, and he wants to build a contender there for many, many years. So congratulations to Corey Mace, but safe to say no surprise here for you.
The only thing that I would say the only person that I would say probably deserved it, or I would have been okay with over Corey Mace, would have been Hamilton's head coach. I can't think of his name right now. I'm drawing a blank, but with the way Hamilton played this season, I feel like that he would have been the only other person I would have put in contention for potential Coach of the Year. So.
Oh dear Lord, why am I blanking his name right now?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I can't figure out why I'm blanking his name either. But
Scott
Milanovic, yes, that's it.
Thank you.
He would have been the only other guy that I felt like would have deserved it, because let's face it, Hamilton missed the playoffs last year. They were 2 years ago. They were pretty dreadful, and then this year they got a first-round bye. So I mean, quite a turnaround over there in Hamilton. So he would have been the only other one that I would have been okay winning that award with. But yeah, not surprising that Mace got it by any means. So
I'm actually surprised that you didn't say Dave Dickinson for Calgary.
The thing with Dave Dickinson in Calgary is, if they had won a game, they didn't get the first round bye like Hamilton did.
True.
If they had won a playoff game, or if it was factored in of any sort that it was a playoff game, I feel like that might have been a different situation. But Hamilton receiving that first round bye just shows me that it was a lot more of a bigger turnaround, because let's face it, Calgary and Hamilton both missed the playoffs 2 years ago. So the fact that Hamilton was actually better and got the first round bye over Calgary in that sense, I think that would be the only reason why I would have put Milanovic ahead of Dickinson there. Great season for Dickinson though, by any means. It's just, when you factor in the end of the regular season and where the team's ranked, I just feel like the turnaround was better for Hamilton than it was for Calgary, even though Calgary still had a great year and made the playoffs.
I know in theory this award is not supposed to consider, like their title as a GM as well, but I think maybe, that makes me feel a little bit better about the job that Dickinson did, and that's probably why I'm thinking that, because that roster rebuild they did all in one off season was impressive. So
still got some work to do, but yeah, I mean, that you're not wrong by any means. You're not wrong at all.
Which, it's one of those things. I don't think anybody's going to argue with Corey Mace winning, though. He won the Grey Cup. You should probably win Coach of the Year as well.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And it was a dominant performance as well. So, but I think that was overall a pretty solid episode. I mean, a good way to put a bow on the season for the CFL show. And and obviously we'll be back, at some point next season. We haven't really talked about it much. Maybe we'll do something for the draft, but we're probably going to shut it down for the off season and let you guys kind of have a couple months without hearing us talk, and then we'll be back. We'll be back near the season. But any final thoughts? Any final like storylines you want to put a bow on for the season?
Not really. I just think that it's I think it was just a great season overall. I think it was a wonderful season by Saskatchewan. I'm so happy that they won it. I'm not even a Saskatchewan fan, but just happy they won it for Corey Mason, the job that he did 2 years ago, and the continuation with the payoff was nice to see because it doesn't always happen that way. But more so, just anything. Happy holidays to everybody. I'll try to be back with a couple of my shows back next year. Hopefully, I can put things in place. But other than that, man, I definitely will come back to Northern Lights next year for sure. So,
absolutely,
yeah.
I look forward to it as well. I love talking the CFL specifically with you for sure. It's been a lot of fun this year. And one thing I want to say is, man, if you're a fan of football in general and you want to see some really good football where you really don't know who's going to win each week, I strongly recommend you check out the CFL. I mean, to give you an idea, last year there were 2 teams that had less than 7 wins. Every other team had 7 or more, and there were 6 total teams that won 10 or more games. Honestly, at least one of the teams that did not do well this year, like we talked about before, was a huge surprise. Everybody expected them to be a playoff contender. So you just truly never know what's going to happen. It's fast-paced football. There isn't a lot of downtime because of the 3 downs, and with the changes coming for the rules, I think it's going to look a lot more familiar for a lot of American fans. And like I said, I strongly recommend you check it out. A lot of the games are free on CFL Plus. Just go to the website, give them your email, sign up, and completely free to watch. What do you have to lose? So, if you kind of checked out this episode today and you're like, I've never really watched the CFL, check out some games. You'll be pleasantly surprised, I think. But overall, a lot of fun this season. Like you said, great season overall, and I look forward to coming back next year.
Sounds good, my man. Excited, and have a Merry Christmas to you and your family as well, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody out there listening as well. So,
yeah, absolutely. We're coming up on Christmas quick, so as we always say, checking on your loved ones, make sure you're telling them that you're thinking about them and all that stuff, and stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy the holidays. And we'll catch you guys next year. Thanks for watching and sticking with us all season.
Yo, what's good? Cedric the bus driver here. I don't know about you guys, but I know what I will be doing every Tuesday, Saturday, and Sunday. And Thursday nights too. I'll be over at Shady Sports Network, so catch up with me. Holla at your boy.